Hello and welcome. This is a bedtime story by Easy Sleep Dash. A soft, quiet place for you to let go of the day, slow your thoughts, and drift into the life you've been quietly dreaming of. Tonight's story is called The House That Waited. It was written especially for women in their 30s, women who've done the work, reached the goals, and are now wondering what comes next. This is a story of rest, of returning to yourself, of imagining a life where peace doesn't come after burnout, but before it. A life that feels within reach. So, make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes and let's begin. The clink of a coffee cup startled Evelyn out of her screen trance. Across the office, someone was laughing too loudly, the kind of laugh that signaled it was after 5 o'clock and the real workday was over. She blinked down at her laptop. The document was done. It had been for 20 minutes. She'd just been reading the same paragraph over and over again, as if a better version of it might emerge if she stared hard enough. Her phone buzzed. Great piece, Evelyn. Nailed it. Another buzz. Can we pull that one line about stillness with teeth for socials? It's gold. She smiled politely at the screen, then locked it. The fluorescent light above her desk flickered once. It always did that near the end of the day, like even the bulbs were tired. She rolled down her sleeves, tugged on her coat, and walked out without saying goodbye. The streets below were loud with life, but her world moved slower. She walked without urgency, her boots clicking in rhythm with the evening. The city hadn't changed. It was still beautiful in its overstimulation, crowded bars glowing like aquariums, shop windows curated to an almost religious degree, buses growling forward with weary inevitability. And yet, something felt thinner than it used to, as if the edges of her life had begun to blur. She passed a man selling tiny bouquets of flowers in jars. He didn't call to her, didn't try to sell, just stood, still and quiet, as if he were part of the sidewalk itself. The air smelled like roasted nuts and wind. She couldn't decide if it made her hungry or sad. 2 more blocks, and she reached their flat, top floor of a narrow old building that tilted ever so slightly toward the street, like it wanted to see what people were up to. Evelyn climbed the stairs slowly. She always did. Her legs weren't tired. She just liked the hush that came with leaving the city behind one floor at a time. Inside, the flat smelled like bergamot and whatever Alex had tried to cook. She heard the rustle of him moving before she saw him. Then, from around the corner, he appeared with a dish towel over his shoulder and a smear of flour on his cheek. "Hi," he said, like it was the best word in the world. "Hi," she said back, dropping her bag on the worn bench by the door. They kissed briefly, warm, familiar, like folding into a favorite jumper. He took her coat, tossed it over the hook, and nodded toward the kitchen. "I tried to make that spelt thing from the show you like." She peeked into the pot. It's grey. It's rustic, he corrected. But also, yes, very grey. They ate on the sofa, legs tangled, bowls balanced on knees. The radio played low jazz in the background, like the flat itself had decided to unwind. I got a weird feeling at work today, she said between bites. Alex looked over, half a spoonful poised. Weird bad or weird interesting? Neither, she said. Just quiet. Like everything I've been building just stopped feeling like something I need to build. He nodded. Didn't push. It's not burnout, she added. I'm not tired. I'm just... She searched the ceiling as if it might hand her the right word. Done. Not in a dramatic way. Just done. Alex chewed, then said, Sounds like a good time to make space. She looked at him. I mean, he went on, you've hit the top of your ladder. Maybe it's time to build a different one. One with fewer rungs. Evelyn laughed softly. That sounds like something you read on a yoga Instagram account. Yeah, yours. She nudged him with her foot. That night, while Alex read beside her, Evelyn stared at the ceiling. The bedroom was dim, lit only by the soft pool of amber from his reading lamp. She loved that light. It made everything feel like a painting. Warm, contained, intentional. She wasn't unhappy. That was the strange part. She had everything she'd ever said she wanted. The job title, the portfolio, the flat, the love, the life. It was all intact, polished, enviable from the outside. And yet the silence inside her had begun to deepen. Not a hollow silence, just space. A sense that something was meant to echo there, and hadn't. Alex clicked off the lamp and rolled toward her, hand finding hers under the duvet. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She dreamed, not of work, not of emails or deadlines or missed trains or men with her coffee order. She stood barefoot in a hallway of smooth wooden floors. The walls were soft white. Light streamed in from unseen windows. A breeze stirred linen curtains. There was a kitchen to her right. She could hear the sound of water, not rushing but lapping, like a lake against the shore. A kettle whistled far off, faint and gentle. She walked slowly toward a wide open doorway. Outside, a lake stretched beyond a patch of soft grass and tall reeds. Sunlight kissed the surface of the water, turning it to glass. Trees framed the far bank, tall and slow-moving in the breeze. She stepped onto a wooden porch. The planks were warm beneath her feet. There was a chair with a woven cushion, a clay mug on the railing, a book left open beside it. The smell of thyme and wood smoke. She felt no need to ask where she was. The answer lived in her bones. She woke just before dawn, still holding Alex's hand. The ceiling above looked unchanged, but everything beneath her skin buzzed with a gentle electricity. Not adrenaline, not fear, just attention. A hush. The feeling you get when something is beginning. Not with a bang, but with a door opening quietly in the back of your mind. She sat up, pushed back the sheets, and stepped into the stillness of the flat. She made tea, held the warm mug between both hands. Outside, the city was beginning to stir. But inside, something had gone still in the most beautiful way. She stood by the window and whispered aloud, as if saying it made it more real. I've been there before. The second time, she didn't expect it. She had gone to bed late, head full of page proofs and an unfinished invoice. The flat had felt warmer than usual, the sheets tangled. Her sleep, when it came, had been light. But then the air shifted, and there it was again. The house. The same hallway, wooden floors, smooth and worn with age. That soft light spilling in like honey from the windows. Curtains catching the wind. She stepped through it with a kind of reverence, not because it was sacred, but because it felt known. Familiar, not in a dream logic way, but in the way one remembers the shape of a childhood home, the creak of a certain stair, the way the light changes in different seasons. The lake called gently beyond the glass. That same low, lapping sound, like breathing. And when she woke, sharply, as if tugged, she felt not disappointment, but grief. The grief of leaving somewhere safe. Over breakfast, Evelyn stirred honey into porridge without tasting it. Alex scrolled the news with his glasses sliding down his nose. The sound of the kettle boiling played counterpoint to the clink of spoons and ceramic. She waited until his second sip of tea before she spoke. I dreamed about the same house again. He looked up. The one with the lake? She nodded. And it felt... I didn't want to leave, she said softly. I wasn't ready to come back. Alex's gaze held hers a beat longer than usual. Then he smiled. You'll get back there. That's how dreams work. She thought of correcting him, thought of explaining that this dream didn't feel like fiction. But she didn't. Some things were truer when left unnamed. Over the next few days, it kept happening. Not every night, but enough. The house remained consistent, its details growing clearer. She noticed new things. A woven rug beneath the kitchen table, the smell of rosemary when the door opened, the faint sound of wind chimes somewhere in the garden. In the dream, she sometimes found herself standing barefoot at the sink, rinsing fruit in a clay bowl. Other times, reading on the porch with her legs tucked up beneath her, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cedar and salt. It didn't feel symbolic. It didn't feel like a message. It felt like a place she had simply forgotten how to get to. The lines between waking and dreaming blurred gently, like watercolors bleeding at the edges. She passed a florist's window one morning and stopped mid-step. A pot of blue salvia sat in the display, identical to the one from the dream's kitchen windowsill. That same afternoon, while editing a travel essay, she scrolled through a photo of a lakeside property in Gloucestershire. Soft green hills, quiet water, and a house in the distance that made her lungs forget to work for a moment. The roofline, the porch, the curtain at the window. She closed the tab, reopened it. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. A day later, while flipping through the pages of a design catalogue, she found a photo of a teacup that matched the one in the dream. White porcelain, hairline crack, faint blue pattern along the rim. Coincidences, she told herself. But the dreams kept coming. One Sunday morning, she sat on the floor of their living room with a stack of mail beside her. Bills, flyers, catalogues, and a slim, folded real estate circular, which she didn't remember signing up for. She flipped through idly. Halfway in, her hand stilled. There it was. Not quite the house, not perfectly, but close enough that something in her stomach went quiet. The shape of the porch, the bare trees, the shadows through the upper window. It was listed as a cottage with potential, a phrase she found oddly tender. Alex came into the room carrying 2 mugs. She held up the paper, wordlessly. He leaned over her shoulder and looked. That, I know. They sat in silence for a moment. Want to see it? He asked finally. Evelyn ran a thumb along the edge of the page. I think I have to. That night, she dreamed again. But this time, she didn't move through the house. She stood outside in the garden, watching herself through the kitchen window. She was smiling, brushing flour from her hands, a pie dish on the counter beside her. And in that moment, Evelyn realized something with clarity so soft, it almost hurt. This wasn't a fantasy. This was a preview, a memory from the future, gently tugging her home. The train pulled out of London on a pale blue morning. Evelyn sat by the window with a flask of coffee and no expectations. Only a hum beneath her skin. Not nervousness, not hope exactly, but something older, like recognition. The countryside unfolded slowly, green giving way to greener, cities melting into trees, villages appearing and vanishing like old postcards. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, sheep dotted the hillsides and mist curled against the glass. She arrived in a place that didn't feel real, yet also didn't feel strange. The village had one platform, no announcements, and a sign that read, Wyamere, in chipped enamel. The air smelled like rain and grass and something faintly floral, like old perfume. A man from the hire shop handed her a bicycle without asking for ID. You'll want the road that curves left at the oak, he said, tapping the handlebars. The house is just beyond the bend. You'll know it when you see it. She didn't ask how he knew. The road followed the edge of a lake, long and still, the surface unbroken but for the occasional ripple from a duck or fish. Reeds whispered beside the path. Trees arched overhead like an invitation. Evelyn slowed her pedalling. Her breath came easy. The air was different here, softer, more private. Time felt rounded at the edges. And then she saw it. Tucked into the fold between 2 low hills, part of it hidden by ivy and bramble, the house emerged. Not dream perfect. The paint was chipped, one shutter hung crooked, the porch sagged slightly on one side. but undeniably it. She dismounted and walked the bike the rest of the way. Gravel crunched underfoot, and a bird somewhere nearby let out a call that echoed down the hill. The gate was low, made of bleached wood. It creaked open with a sound that made her throat tighten. She stepped through and onto the path. Her feet remembered it before her mind did. The agent was late. Evelyn didn't mind. She paced the garden, small, overgrown, with foxgloves poking through old hedges. The porch was wide and wrapped around the side of the house. A wind chime danced faintly, though there was no breeze. When she looked through the front window, her breath caught. It was dusty inside, shadowed, but the shape of the rooms, the way the light fell, was familiar. She could already imagine the curtain she'd hang, the mug on the sill, the rug beneath the table. The air smelled like moss, like old wood and cold stone. The lake whispered in the distance. The whole place felt like an exhale that had waited too long. By the time the agent arrived, a woman in a sensible coat and worn boots, Evelyn had already made the decision, though she didn't know it yet. Inside, it was quiet, not neglected, just paused. The furniture was sparse, a table, 2 chairs, an old settee beneath the front window, a stack of yellowing newspapers on the floor. Dust lined the edges of the windowsills, and a cobweb bridged 2 beams in the corner of the ceiling. But nothing felt sad. Nothing felt abandoned. The kitchen was small, but full of charm. Original tile, wooden counters, a deep sink with a view of the lake. Evelyn stood at the sink and stared out for a long time. "I know it needs work," the agent said gently, flipping through her notes. "The owner passed last year. Her niece inherited it, but she lives abroad. They were thinking of tearing it down, to be honest." Evelyn didn't answer. She moved through the house slowly, fingertips grazing the walls, shoes quiet on the floorboards. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms faced the lake. One had sloped ceilings and a little window seat, painted white. The other had no furniture at all. Just light. Just space. She paused there for a long time. Outside, the wind had picked up. She walked to the edge of the garden, where the trees opened to a sloping path that led down to the lake. The grass was tall. Bees hovered lazily over thistles. Somewhere across the water, a dog barked once distantly. She crouched and dipped her fingers in the water. Cool, smooth, clean. Behind her, the house stood with quiet patience, not beckoning, not pleading, just being. She stood, turned, and looked at it again. The sun shifted slightly. The shadows moved, and Evelyn knew this was not a dream, and it wasn't a coincidence. This was the place her mind had visited in sleep, not because it was impossible, but because it was waiting for her. Because it was hers. She didn't need time to think. She didn't need to imagine what her life would look like here. She had already seen it. That evening, Evelyn sat at a pub near the edge of the village. The interior was all stone and softness. Thick curtains, mismatched chairs, candles flickering in little jars. She ordered mushroom soup and sourdough and ate slowly, barely tasting it. Across from her, a woman with silver hair and a worn wool coat caught her gaze and smiled. "New in town?" the woman asked. "Maybe," Evelyn said. The woman raised her glass. "Good place to stop running." Evelyn smiled. She wasn't sure she'd been running, but maybe she had. Not with her feet, but with her schedule, with her goals, with the quiet ache to earn rest rather than receive it. Back at the little inn where she was staying, Evelyn lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. She didn't sleep right away. She didn't dream, but she didn't need to. The house was no longer something she had to visit. It was now somewhere she could return. The house was hers by the end of the month. No drama, no negotiation, just signatures, soft handshakes, and an envelope of keys that felt warm in her palm, like something alive. The first time she crossed the threshold as its owner, Evelyn stood just inside the doorway and didn't move. She listened. There was no sound. Not silence in the empty sense, not vacant or hollow, but a full, complete quiet. The kind that wraps around you, presses gently into your chest and says, "You may rest here." She set her bag down and walked barefoot across the dusty floors. Each room greeted her like an old friend, with no urgency, no demand, just space, light, waiting. Her first few days passed in a rhythm unlike anything she'd ever lived before. There was no alarm clock, no commute, no obligation. She woke with the light, the soft angle of the sun slipping through pale curtains. She made tea with water from the kettle and drank it sitting cross-legged on the porch steps, wrapped in a sweater she hadn't worn in years. The mornings were cool, even in early summer, but the air smelled of green things, damp moss, leaves, and the faintest trace of lavender that she hadn't planted, but somehow always found. Each day she fixed one thing, not more, just one. A squeaky door hinge, a drawer that stuck, the latch on the garden gate. The smallness of each task felt sacred. She didn't rush. She didn't list them. There was no finish line, only unfolding. The house began to change. Or maybe she did. She cleaned each room by hand, not because it was dirty, but because she wanted to touch the place, to trace its corners, open its windows, let it breathe again. She aired the linens. She placed bowls of rosemary and dried lemon peel on the windowsills. She swept the floors slowly, carefully, the bristles whispering across the wood like a kind of prayer. Every action felt like care, not just maintenance. She didn't decorate. She arranged, as if the house had preferences and she was only helping it remember what it liked. The dog came on the fourth morning, a grey, speckled creature with eyes like rainwater and paws too large for its body. It padded into the garden just after dawn and sat beneath the willow tree near the porch, as if summoned. Evelyn offered toast crusts. The dog accepted them politely. She tried a dozen names in her head, but nothing felt right until she whispered, "Willow." and the dog looked up at her like it had been waiting to be reminded. After that, they became a pair, not in the ownership sense, in the shared silent sense. Alex visited the following weekend. He arrived by train, carrying a tin of biscuits and an amused smile. "This place smells like peace," he said as he stepped into the hallway. Evelyn kissed his cheek. "It is peace." They ate dinner on the floor, cushions and low bowls of stew, the light outside turning gold. Willow slept in the corner, one ear twitching occasionally as if to stay informed. After dinner, they sat on the porch with tea and wool blankets. "I haven't seen you this still in years," Alex said. "I didn't realize I was always moving," Evelyn replied. He looked at her, the way you look at someone you love and suddenly see clearly. "I think you've been trying to earn peace your whole life, like it had to come after something. But maybe it doesn't." She rested her head on his shoulder. "It's strange. I thought I'd feel guilty for stepping back." "Do you?" She exhaled. Not even a little. The days grew slower still. Rain came in long, soothing stretches. Evelyn sat inside with books, with soup, with music so soft it became part of the weather. She wrote small things in a notebook, not plans, not reflections, just moments. Words that rose and passed like clouds. Chipped teacup, warm rain, scent of mint and smoke. Silence that hums, not hollows. Willow sighs in her sleep. A shared exhale. Sometimes she forgot what day it was. Not in a chaotic way, in a way that made the whole concept of weeks and months feel irrelevant. She didn't need a calendar to mark progress. She had birdsong, the smell of earth after rain, the rhythm of her own breathing, slowing day by day. There were no revelations, no breakthroughs, just softness. One morning, she watched sunlight move across the floor in a perfect rectangle. It took nearly 20 minutes to shift from one board to the next. She sat with it the whole time. No phone, no distraction, just the light and breath and the sound of the lake in the distance. And in that slowness, something in her softened that she hadn't known was tight. She wasn't chasing anything. She wasn't proving anything. She was simply in her life. Finally. The mail came late in Waimea, a single van rolling down the lane just before noon, the driver always waving without stopping. Evelyn collected the post from the end of the drive in her slippers, tucking the envelopes under one arm, while Willow trotted beside her with the quiet pride of someone on an important errand. Among the usual flyers and an energy bill was a letter from the magazine. Formal, warm, full of corporate kindness. They'd kept her part-time role open longer than necessary. The new editor had settled in. They were grateful for her contributions, but understood her life had shifted. Evelyn read the letter while leaning against the gatepost, the lake shimmering in the distance. She didn't feel sad, not even wistful. She folded the letter neatly and slipped it into the pocket of her cardigan. It was strange, she thought, how easily she had mistaken noise for purpose. Later that afternoon, she walked to the village for apples and beeswax candles. The shop door tinkled when she opened it. The warmth inside smelled of flour and old wood, and something sweet she couldn't name. Mrs. Ellis stood behind the counter, arranging bunches of herbs into jars. She looked up and smiled with her whole face. "You've settled in nicely," she said, not as a question. "I have," Evelyn replied. "I'm staying." Mrs. Ellis nodded like she'd already known. "That house doesn't suit the temporary type." Evelyn leaned on the counter. "I thought it might be a phase or a detour, but it feels like my actual life." "That's what home feels like," Mrs. Ellis said, tying a ribbon around a small bundle of lavender. "Not loud, not grand, just real enough to stop pretending you're elsewhere." They spoke a while longer, about the rain, about fruit preserves, about the best way to store linens so they never lose that sun-dried smell. Evelyn left with a paper bag of apples, candles, and a feeling that didn't have a name. Something between being seen and being placed gently into the right hands. Back at the house, she lit the candles even though it wasn't dark yet. The scent filled the kitchen. Warm honey and wax, the faintest edge of smoke. She made tea and sat at the table with her notebook, its cover soft and worn now from daily use. She didn't journal in the traditional sense. She simply recorded what she noticed. The color of the sky, just after 6. The rhythm of Willow's breathing when she sleeps on her back. How water looks when the wind brushes it gently. She didn't write to remember. She wrote to belong, to anchor herself in her own days. Alex called that evening, his voice low and steady through the phone. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Everything's still," Evelyn replied, her gaze drifting to the porch, where the last of the light had turned the grass gold. "Still good," he teased. "Still everything." There was a pause. "I think I was scared before," she said, "that I'd disappear if I stopped moving." "And have you?" She smiled. "Number, I think I've finally shown up." A few nights later, she woke early. Not from a sound, just a gentle stirring, as if something had nudged her from inside. She pulled on a sweater and walked out to the porch barefoot. The planks were cool. The night was still velvet around her. The moon floated low over the lake, not bright, but whole. She sat on the step, Willow curling up beside her like a question mark returned to its sentence. She didn't think about anything grand. Not legacy, not transformation, just a slow realization, like tea steeping. She no longer felt like a visitor in her own life. She belonged to this quiet, to the rustle of trees, to the echo of her own breathing, to the slowness that had, against all odds, begun to love her back. She didn't need to be busy to be real. She just needed to be here. Evelyn woke just before the light did. Not abruptly, not from a sound, just a gentle shift inside her chest, like a door opening to let in morning. The room was warm beneath the blanket, cool at the edges. The curtains stirred faintly. Outside, she could hear the lake, not calling, not whispering, just being. That familiar lapping, like breath, made sound. She lay still for a while, listening to her body. It didn't ache. It didn't rush. It asked for nothing. She slid out of bed and crossed the room slowly, her feet padding against the old wood floor, soft with age and memory. Her sweater hung on the back of the chair where she'd left it last night, and she pulled it on without thinking. It smelled like cedar and warmth. Willow was already awake, her tail thudding gently against the floor, eyes half-lidded with contentment. Evelyn scratched behind her ears. "Good morning, you," she murmured. The dog rolled over, paws in the air, unapologetically relaxed. Evelyn smiled and padded barefoot into the kitchen. The kettle hissed as it warmed. The counter held the usual signs of a life lived slowly. A bowl of apples, 2 mugs drying on a linen cloth, a note to pick up fresh eggs from the village. She opened the window. The morning air drifted in, cool and soft, scented faintly with damp leaves and wood smoke. The lake was just visible through the trees, light starting to skim its surface. Mist hung over the water in threads, dissolving as the sun reached it. She stood there, both hands wrapped around the warm mug, and realized she hadn't dreamed of the house in weeks. Not once. And yet she didn't miss the dream, because it had already come true. Not in the dramatic, the grand, the life-changing. In the deeply ordinary, in the way the floor creaked just before the teapot's whistle, in the way the light poured through the kitchen window at just the right angle to make her pause, in the way her chest no longer carried that quiet ache, that hum of wondering if there was more. She didn't wonder anymore. This was it. Not a moment she was waiting for. Not a chapter before something greater. Just her life. Beautiful. Lived. Full. She walked out onto the porch, the boards warm beneath her feet now that the sun had touched them. Willow followed, curled up by the railing with a satisfied grunt, nose tucked into her side. The trees moved gently, a kind of dance you only notice when you have time to sit still long enough to watch it. Evelyn sat in her chair, tucked her legs beneath her, and cradled her tea like a small, perfect truth. There was no plan for the day, no list, no destination, and yet the day felt whole. A leaf drifted from the tree overhead and landed on the step beside her. She didn't move it. The lake rippled once, just enough to catch the light and toss it back into the sky. And Evelyn, without even noticing, exhaled. Not the breath you take when you're about to speak, or run, or prove yourself, but the kind you release when there's nothing left to chase, when you are already home. And that was The House That Waited, a bedtime story by Easy Sleep. If you're still awake, may this quiet moment be a doorway, and may your dreams lead you somewhere beautiful tonight, maybe to your own home by the lake, maybe to the life that's been softly calling your name. Not one you have to earn, but one you can begin gently whenever you're ready. Thank you for listening. Sweet dreams. And until next time, sleep well.